G'day everyone and welcome to Expand the Phantom podcast. This is the team from chroniclechamber.com and you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening to at the moment, whatever is your favourite podcast app. This is episode 263. It's our October comics and news reviews. My name's Fraser. I'm joined by Jermayn Parker. How are you, Jerm?
Yeah, not bad. It's heating up down under. We're getting into the summer, so that's good as well.
Absolutely. And not just talking about Australian comics, of course, although that's what you and I read and subscribe to and get stuck into. But over the course of the podcast, we'll go around the grounds around the world and hear some of the other reviews of comics from around the globe. Stephen's not with us, unfortunately, today. He succumbed to, I think it's his fifth or seventh or something bout of COVID. That may be over the top, but I know Steve's been laid low with the return of the bug again this week. So hope you're feeling better soon, Steve, and can join us for the next one. All right. That said, we may as well get stuck straight into it, Germ. It's a Sunday morning where we are, and we've got lots of things we need to get done this afternoon. So let's look into the Frew publications issues. And this is the first time we've come together for a comics and news episode since the release of the 75th anniversary issue, which was issue 1952. We went into a really deep dive on that in a previous podcast if you'd like to go back. But the next issue that came out, 1953, features a sequel to one, or not a sequel, the second part of one of the stories that was in that issue. And that, of course, is the second part of The Kiss of the Devil by Pidde, Andersson and Giancarlo Caracuzzo. What did you think, Jermayn? It's good to see it in colour for a start. Not often we see a regular issue in colour. So, yeah, enjoyed that.
Yeah, look, agree. I'm really enjoying Giancarlo's work in colour. I think it's his daughter, Vallvé. I think she does a great job in working with her dad's style of the colours. It reminds me... There was a lot of nostalgia in reading this. There's obviously the Rocketeer theme. There's the Easter Islands. There's the underground things. Remind me of a Tintin comic. Style of the art has a real European feel to it, which makes sense because all creators are actually from Europe. Yeah. Look, I had fun. There's the lead femme fatale is a likable but not a memorable bad person. So, of course she gets away at the end, which means there's the possibility of her coming back. There's the main Sterling investigator kind of reminds me of the clumsy sidekick in a sense, but I quite like him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I did not. I thought he was hopeless. I know what you're saying, clumsy, but my goodness, he literally goes, "Oh, I've got a prisoner. Let's walk down the steps and get knocked out." And boom, I've just walked myself into the trap. He didn't even sneak in. He just wandered down the stairs and got his head hit. So
yeah, but it's not the only one. Looking at page 13, and then there's a panel that got his adventure quota of being knocked at the back of the head as well. But look, it was fun. In reading part one, I was unsure where this was kind of going and if it was going to be just a second part and that was going to be the end of it or not. Well, I would like to see Sterling come back, fumble his way into another adventure down the track and bump into the Phantom as well. But no, look, I had fun reading it. It's not a heavy read in the sense that it's not trying to solve world peace or trying to, break up the war in Ukraine or Second World War or anything like that. It's a fun adventure comic where you can have a little bit of a laugh, you can read it, enjoy, and then you can get on with your life. And sometimes those are what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. That's surely that is what you want from your comic books, isn't it? A little bit of escapism. I thought Madame Destine is one of the better femme fatales we've seen in quite a while, and I feel like we were in a bit of a chat with Pidde, and I think that he actually wrote this 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And
I think it was even longer than that. I think it was like 6 years ago from memory.
Yeah, right. Because certainly in chatting with him, he was like, "Oh, I can't really remember how that went." No, it gets published. But no, full credit to him for creating her as a really engaging character, and the way that Giancarlo's drawn her. She's quite a sexy young lady, and brings that sort of appeal to the comic as well. And I'm sure there'd be lots of 14, 15-year-old boys who pick this up and go, you know what, I might start reading Phantom comics on a bit more of a regular basis. So, as you said, she does get away in the end. We don't see her disappear. And of course, I'd probably prefer to see her back before Jim Sterling, to be fair.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's do a bit of a shout out to, this page. If you're on YouTube, we're going through the comic. But this is page 26, 27, 28, and 29, which has a big aerial battle with Rocketeer style jetpacks, which, look, I actually recently rewatched the Rocketeer maybe 6 months ago, and I enjoyed it, remembering back to that and remembering that, and then reading this, and it was, it filled you with some, fuzzy feelings, and sometimes that's what you want.
Yeah. It was interesting, wasn't it? What felt like little shout outs to those sorts of influences. You mentioned Tintin. There's certainly a scene where they're going into one of the Easter Island statues that's very reminiscent of Tintin stories. This with its harkening of the Rocketeer, even scenes that feel like they're from the Phantom movie or inspired by the Phantom movie. Now, again, having spoken to Pidde, I don't necessarily think that was at the forefront of his mind when he was writing them. He certainly would say that they weren't, but you can tell that those sorts of things must have had an influence of some kind, just ticking away in the background there. Sometimes we have comics with great big splash pages with an outstanding montage or whatever like that. There wasn't anything like that in this one so much. Like you say, it was an entertaining read, a relatively quick read. I've gone back and read it a couple of times just because I did enjoy it to that extent. It flowed really well. I think the artwork works really well. And to circle back, I suppose, talking about the colours, I think that we might have said this in a previous podcast. I think it might have even been when we were talking about 1952. But I think Frew are getting much cleverer about the type of colours and the instructions they're probably passing on about here's the type of colours, or here's how colouring is going to work with our page quality, rather than go, okay, we need to spend the extra money and increase the page quality. And therefore pass on that price to the reader, just being a little bit cleverer with the colours that they do use on the paper that we can all afford, sort of stuff. So,
well, you raise a good point. So, 1953, which was all colour, that was $5.95, where the regular black and white one is $4.40. Now, this is Australian. Obviously, New Zealand's a little bit different, and currency's a little bit different, but that's $1.50 extra for colour, which is not is a good price range.
I think we all in many ways still go, oh, Frew comics, they're $1.50, mostly because that was the price point when we got hooked in, and that sort of still sticks for a lot of people, I think. And you start going, oh, a regular issue is $6 now. Sounds like a lot, but by comparison with other comic books that you're picking up off the shelf, obviously there's not so many comics and newsagents anymore, but you go into any comic book store and try and get a 36-page full-color story for $6, you're not doing it. Any of those American comics, any of the Marvel, the DC, you're twice the price. So I think Frew are doing a great job of being able to maintain a price point that is affordable. Cost of living, prices and inflation notwithstanding, we see that all over the place. But, for the bang for your buck, I think they're doing a great job. The cover's probably, we didn't mention the cover. It's, I guess, just a highlights package of everything that's inside. And it is interesting, I suppose. I just talked about so much, but it's the inside, the first page of the book is it's almost like you did two drafts of the cover and then they picked one for the outside, one for the inside.
Okay, so question, which one would have you preferred to be the front cover, the inside page or the actual front cover?
Probably.
I actually like the inside page personally.
Yeah. They haven't left the room as much for the banner up there, so maybe that was part of the reason why this one didn't get chosen. But yeah, I would agree. I think the one that was actually page one would have worked just as effectively, if not more so, as the front cover.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so let's move on. Now, the next two issues we're going to talk about, and I say that advisedly because we probably talk about them, we want to talk about them individually to an extent, of course, but it's one big telling of the same story. So Frew issues 1954 and 1955, two regular issues, 36 pages. Neither of them have got the little filler story at the back because this is a publication of a 1989 story from Team Fantomen back when they were still doing full stories of that nature, hadn't reduced to the 22 pages we've seen more recently. It's, I don't do the maths, it's about a 70-odd page story all told across two books, The Night of the Jesters and The Demon in the Tower. Maybe before we dive into the story itself, you've got the cover for Night of the Jesters on the screen there. That's by Jeremy McPherson. And then Marcelo Bays did the cover for the next issue, 1955. Both wraparounds. What were your thoughts on the cover for Night of the Jesters?
Really enjoy Jamie's work. He's a friend of the podcast. He's a great guy, but he's also a good artist. But in saying that, I do prefer Marcelo's over Jeremy's cover.
Yeah, fair enough. I like and you've got the front cover there. I do like the glow up and that's Thomas Mason's colouring work on Jeremy McPherson's artwork. The glow up that the Phantom has with the moon coming in over his shoulder and the way that that works for him. And then the back covers also features a fairly large moon and a very classic. I just really like the way that Jeremy McPherson portrays the Phantom's face in particular, and he also gets the proportions of the body just on for mine. But that said, I agree that Marcelo Bays's cover for 1955, and we'll bring that up later, but it's probably... Well, it's very dynamic as well. And I think this is only Marcelo's second cover, I want to say, even though he's done cards and that sort of thing. I think it's second.
I think he's done a couple more. I think he's done maybe 3 or 4, but yeah, he hasn't done many. Okay.
Well, it's good to see him. Good to see him in the brief as well. All right. So, Night of the Jesters. If we start with that one, as I said, this is from 1989. Has never previously been published by Frew. Has not been published in English before. This was back when Klaus Stramathi was still Michael Thierry's or was using that pen name. Must have been towards the end of his run because I sort of thought that was just the 80s and this is 89, as I said. And the art by Jaime Vallvé. Where do you want to start talking about this one, Jerm?
We made a little bit of fun on our social medias about the Phantom and his preservation methods. A little bit of chuckle from a couple of fans. A priceless document, and then he opens up a glass cabinet in the middle of a damp, dusty skull cave, and then holding it with his hands. So it's a little bit funny, but that's probably a discussion for another day. I really enjoy Jaime Vall's artwork. It's dynamic, it's bold. Bad guys are always ugly. Like you look at the villain and they've got the sharp edges on the beard and the eyebrows and stuff, which makes them look demonic in a sense. So you know who's a bad guy, who's not. It's a lot like Wilson McCoy. I love the blacks that he uses. I got to say, the second Phantom throughout part 1 and part 2 is probably not portrayed as a very heroic, resourceful type of Phantom. He's a bit of a bumbling idiot who kind of just gets, he kind of fumbles his way from one part of the adventure to another, and bit of a like a lovesick puppy. But look, I really enjoyed the story. It's not too heavily themed on religious battles and stuff like that, which some of the 70s and 80s stories can be at times. I enjoyed it. I love the artwork. The storyline's solid. I'm glad I got to read it.
Yeah, I'm certainly glad that it has finally been published by Frew. What are we? 30 years ago? 35 years nearly. Wow. Yeah, I'm certainly glad that we've got to see it. I can understand probably why it wouldn't have been published during what Jim Shepard was doing in the 90s and early 2000s. It had a bit of a different focus, and it's not one of the stronger Ramirthi or Tierra's stories. I wouldn't have thought. The artwork, I agree, is spectacular, but the way that you've characterised the actual Phantom there, I think you're spot on. He really does just sort of. He just is through the story. He's not really taking control of the action at any stage, which is more like what you'd like to see the Phantom doing. He gets drawn along by other characters more so, and he's not a great, he's not a great detective in this one, trying to unfold and see what happens. He gets presented with information as we go through. There's a lot of different vested interests, and the whole story centers on these two different princes trying to take control of a chest of Leonardo da Vinci's and get all of his really cool designs and that sort of stuff. But and they, each of those two princes, have actors, well, literally actors, or a performance troupe, or other spies and that sort of thing working for them. It gets quite complicated. But the Phantom never solves any of that himself. He just sort of discovers it when someone tells him about it, as much as anything. So I thought that was a weaker portrayal of a Phantom character.
Yeah, definitely agree. The fight scenes are great. The action scenes, like the Phantom jumping through the air. There's some great action scenes. It reminds me of watching like a Three Musketeers type of movie, where you've got these agile people with the sword fights, with the jumping, with the flips, the horse tricks, and all that type of stuff. And it's just, oh wow, like it reminds me of that when I read it.
I think it highlights that across the two parts, it highlights that you don't want to be a bear. Back in medieval Europe, doesn't turn out well for bears across the two comics. And it was, I think, well, that's an example, I suppose. That was something that was kind of repeated across the two, in terms of the little side bar with a bear. I did feel like there was a few things that they went, Ramirthi as Tierra's went back to maybe a little bit too often. He liked, for instance, and we don't want to do lots of spoilers, but the hanging cages in the Demon in the Tower. He went back to that multiple times, and it was almost the same action sequence was just repeated. And I really liked the up in the air type stuff. But we also saw that in Night of the Jesters with the tightrope walking and that sort of thing. So it did feel like a little bit kept going back to the same well of ideas a little bit too much for mine. I would have liked to see a bit more variety as that unfolded.
I actually wouldn't mind have seen a little bit more of the tightrope type of stuff, because like we saw a lot of it in the first one. So maybe the Phantom could have picked up some of it,
some skills there,
and then have had to use that in the second one, in the Demon in the Tower. Now, for those who are on YouTube, we've kind of flicked through and we're now onto the Demon of the Tower. And here there was still that avenue for maybe some more tightrope type of adventures, the acrobats jumping, but that would have required the Phantom to be a little bit more of a Phantom and not just a bumbling nobody.
Correct. Yeah. Which would fix the problems that we already talked about as well. So, and it's interesting, like I mentioned before, that there's not one overarching title for these two stories. They are a part one and a part two. But other than Felicia and the fact that there's keys, there's not really a lot of extension of the first story into the second story. You could read that as a standalone and never read the first part and not be you miss nothing really in terms of that continuity of a story.
Especially with I would say the recap was really good.
Yeah, that was done well.
Which kind of helps it.
Yeah, it does. But you probably wouldn't miss much even. As I say, you certainly didn't need to read the first one to enjoy the second one.
The whole purpose or the center point of the adventure, which was this chest and the drawings inside, and they're still fighting for the drawings 50 years or 20, 30 or whatever years afterwards, that was a bit of a, don't know the right word, but it was a bit weak.
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting one because the premise being that there's this chest that Leonardo da Vinci has designed. So, of course, it's impenetrable, except unless you've got all three keys to operate the chest turning at the same time, and the three keys get separated, and these two princes are trying to get them back together and acquire all the keys. Look, that right up, and sorry if this is a spoiler, but that was the absolute weakest moment of the story for mine. The Phantom is off to try and get being sent from one prince to the other to try and get more keys. And he's thinking on the journey, oh, no one knows that I've got a key. Haha, I've got something up my sleeve. He walks in to see the second prince, and the first thing he says is, right, I've got a key. What? Play your cards close to your chest, man. What do you think's going to happen if you walk in and say, I've got a key? They're going to take it off you. That seemed like that just seemed like a ridiculous thing for him to have done.
He seemed very green and novice, like even at the beginning of the part one where he got attacked by those bandits. Now, when I think of the second Phantom, now obviously, I've read a lot of the stories because I did it with the Phantom Bible and all that. But even before then, I think of the stories like the Battle on Malta and some of these other Carrie Leppinan stories and Elf Granberg stories, where this story just doesn't seem to match with the second Phantom of what I've read in previous Phantom stories.
That was one thing I wanted to ask you, actually, because obviously you've done a power of work on creating that Phantom Bible, and I'd certainly encourage anyone to follow the links from our website and check that out. When you pick up a story like this, then, and it's 35 years old, and it was written by Klaus Ramerthi, someone who knows the lore of the Phantom inside and out as much as anyone. What do you do then if you go back to your entry on the second Phantom and go, okay, now I've got to factor in what Ramerthi has said in this story, or certainly there's a love interest in this one. Does that come into the entry there? Because this is information we weren't previously aware of, but it is out there.
Great question. First of all, I just want to say page 19. Great artwork on that one. That's on the screen. But getting back to your question, so this is the description I've currently got. Had a difficult relationship with his father for the first 10 odd years. After Marabella left the deep woods to rule, she took the second Phantom with her. Eventually, he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, which saw the start of his training and a great relationship. Interestingly, in the second Phantom also had a poor relationship with his own son, which was the third one, which ties in with the third Phantom running off to school. Lee Falk accidentally had the second Phantom marry his mum. We won't go into too much details about that one. Team Fantomen has had two different women marry the second Phantom. In one story, Team Fantomen, they say he married 4 women. So in knowing that, I was intrigued where the end of this story was going with Felicia. Yep. Only 2 have been mentioned in stories. And then according to what makes the most sense is Anne is the mother of the third Phantom. And then I've just said maybe best having just 2 wives with Elena and Anne, his only wives. And then some characteristics. So I'm just going to read this out, and then people can, as they've read this, they can see whether we need to adjust the second Phantom description due to this story. Blonde hair, had a temper like his dad, swore the oath at 18 or 19. He has a half-brother. His weapons consisted of a sword, crossbow, bow, and arrow, and snap-lock guns. And then, of course, there's some details of his dad. So I don't really think it needs to be changed probably that much. Obviously, we've kind of touched upon the fact that he's been a bit unlucky in love, which kind of matches this story. In my opinion, this story, the way he is portrayed as a bumbling idiot, which I think is a fair enough assessment, is probably a little bit of an outlier compared to the other stories I've read. But in looking at a panel like this, of 19, where he thinks quick on his feet, he jumps off there, then he grabs it. That's the type of second Phantom I like.
I think the bumbling idiot bit is how did he get into that hanging cage in the first place? And again, Because he walked in and said, "Here I am, put me in a cage." Even as he enters the castle, going, "Geez, you wouldn't want to be in one of those cages, you idiot."
Yeah. There's attributes in the story that is Phantom-like, but then there's attributes that are not Phantom-like. When I'm reading a story, and, maybe this is just because I'm a little bit different because I've spent, a good 6 months of my life every day doing this Phantom Bible, is that I'm looking at it from the perspective of a broad picture, stepping back. How does it fit into the Phantom Bible that we created? That's how I'm kind of doing it. And so when I read it, I'm like, oh, that's not really the second Phantom that I know, that I am aware of. But for the average fan who just wants to read a good story, it probably wouldn't be an issue for him.
No, I just thought it was an interesting one, because there will be these things that crop up, and it doesn't all necessarily jigsaw together effectively. What did you think of the title, "The Demon in the Tower"? What did you think of what did you think of the demon? This beast that was scaring everybody and protecting the chest.
Like what I said before with the movie, it's it's the larger than life. It's everything's big, it's scary. Lee Falk has used giant gorillas. The Thuggies adventure is one that comes to mind, where the Phantom, puts a chain around him, and then he puts an oil drum on it, uses a lever situation with the tree and pushes it off, and then he's kind of dangling in midair, like that. When I'm reading this, that kind of reminds me. I probably would prefer if the Phantom didn't kill the monkey.
I thought he was just knocked out. There's a lot going on in these stories, and it was just another one of the new characters and the new interactions that seem to be coming from every stage. The wizard, or the guy who's also seeking the key, and he's a double agent, that sort of thing. He was a really interesting character for about 2.5 pages. Was in and out of the story in a hurry as well. So I don't know. It's this may have been
there was a lot going on.
Fast-paced story with lots going on. I probably preferred The Kiss of the Devil in terms of the pacing of that story than this one, which had so much more complexity to it. But that said, the artwork, and we keep coming back to this, but the artwork of Vallvé is just extraordinary. It really is one of the better Team Fantomen artists as far as I'm concerned.
Now, I'm not going to go further than the page 29 because there's the twist at the end. This has only just come out. I want to give some fans a bit of a chance before they read it. I will say I did like how Dudley didn't ruin the ending in his message from the publisher. And if anything, he almost added to it by leading us down a direction. I thought the way he did that, kudos to Dudley, because, I read the message from the publisher first, which, I probably shouldn't, and I probably should learn that not to do that. But I thought, because I read it and I went, oh, okay. And then I'm reading it and I'm going, okay, yeah. And then I get the ending and I'm like, Dudley, you tease. You lead me down the garden path.
Well, I don't read the message from the publisher until after I've read the story. I've been caught one too many times. But I agree with you. Even in hindsight, reading it second, he's done exactly as you've said there. So no, that was well done. Can you bring that one back up? We spoke about Marcelo Baez's cover, or maybe we can just look at it while I hold it there. It is a wraparound, as I said. So we commented that we do like Marcelo Baez's work. You said this was a better one than the other. What did you like in particular about this cover?
The depth that he created with the larger than life sword in front of the Phantom, which is, he's drawn the Phantom's arm and the sword bigger than everything else, which kind of gives you the idea that it's in front of everything. So there's that depth. He's got the little spiral happening as well, which we learnt about when we were talking to Alex. Trip.
That's right.
So, you've kind of got that spiral. I liked how you used the bad guy with that evil looking face and stuff like that. Bold, it's in your face. And then even with like the shadows of like the black silhouettes of the horses and stuff like that with the gorilla in the background.
It's funny, when I first picked this up and got this out of my subscription envelope, at first glance, I thought, wow, this is a very different style from Shane Foley that I'm used to, because the Phantom's face for mine had a big. It reminded. I just thought it was a Shane Foley cover, and then the more just a Shane Foley face. But I was like, it's not quite what I usually see from him. And then twigged that it wasn't Shane's. The more you look around the rest of it, you go, well, hang on, Shane would not draw his damsel like that. That's a different style, and you see the signature down there. But no, I just thought it was interesting that the actual, literally the face of the Phantom, I think certainly had a lot of. But gee, I really like the way that that's done. He's a very chiseled face. He's a strong character there, and almost a little smile on his lips as he's wading into action.
Dan, just before we move on to the giant size, we're talking about Marcelo Baez. This is actually his third Frew cover. Like you said, that he has done a few posters, prints, and cards and stuff. So his first one was 1766. If you're on YouTube, you will see a screenshot of that. And then there was 1890. Also has a damsel on the front cover, so Marcelo's got a style. And then, of course, you've got this one, which is 1955. So there hasn't been too many. There's been a couple.
Yeah, I remember meeting him as well. We were down at a Supernova, and I feel like it was a few years ago we were going to see him to get comics signed and trading cards signed back when he only had the one cover, I'm pretty sure, because I remember thinking, oh, yes, we've listed him as a Phantom creator, but one cover is pretty much all that he's got. And then all of a sudden there was the trading cards that came out, and now he's produced another couple of covers since. So every 120 issues or so not exactly a regular contributor, but certainly someone I wouldn't mind seeing more of in this space. We're moving on to giant size issue now. This is number 26. And speaking of covers, now this is a style of cover that I guess you pick up a giant size these days and you know that you're going to get something a bit quirky and something a bit different. And Glenn Lumsden geez, he must have fun doing these. But I really enjoyed the front cover of Giant Size Phantom 26. A different style with the Phantom sitting comfortably in his lounge chair, reading the Bengali Times, all excited because it's this might be a little poke at News Corp and Australian newspapers with wow, we've got special comics sections starting in the Bengali Times. And he's surrounded on the walls behind him by portraits of a lot of the other characters, the other giant size Frew characters. Did you like this cover?
I did. Have you noticed that the strip down the left-hand side along the spine didn't have the 20 stories or 5 stories, 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 5 stories?
Yeah. It struck me as cleaner, but I didn't identify that. It looks good, I reckon, without it.
Yeah, and then you've still got the corner box, and then you've got the Phantom, but you've got all of the other heroes as well. This panel here of the Panther flying the airplane, from memory, the original of this had a different character. I'll include screenshots, so for those on YouTube, you can see what I'm talking about. But there was another character instead of the Black Panther, and then when they realized that character wasn't going to be included in this story and the Black Panther was, Glenn edited to be the Black Panther instead.
Right, so that only characters who have got stories in this particular issue featured on the cover. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, so this one, it's an unusual sort of a giant size because a lot of the giant size books have, they've been there 196 pages or 100 pages or whatever they are. This one's 100, so they probably all are 100 except for the specials. They often have 6, 7, 8 stories. One of them often has been quite a short Phantom story, 4 to 6 pages. And then we see the rest of the Frew universe characters across the remainder, mostly reprints of old stories, the occasional modern retelling of one of those characters. This one's a little unusual in the sense that it's only got, it's got six stories. Only 3 of them are those other Frew characters. Well, primarily, there's a bit of crossover, obviously, but my point being that 3 of the 6 stories are actually Phantom stories, which is a much higher proportion than usual in the giant size. Is that something you'd like to see continue, where we see more Phantom stories in the giant size, or is it a place that really should be seeing a lot more of the others?
I like it. You get your 3 reprints, your classic reprints from the 50s. You get a Cy Barry or Wilson McCoy or Raymore type of story, which keeps the focus happy. And then you have some little fun crossovers, which we've got two of. So, in my opinion, this is the ideal giant size formula to use.
Let's have a look at the Phantom stories. So the frame up is the first one. Giant size do tend to lead out with the Phantom story, and we've got a lengthy Phantom story on this occasion. Let me just check. 17 pages, which is one of the longer ones, as I said before. The frame up, which is Lee Falk and Cy Barry. It's been a long time since I've read the frame up. What did you think of it as you touched into it again?
Dare I say, this is probably the better story of General Babu when he returns. I actually enjoyed this one better than a lot of the other ones that we've seen afterwards. The whole son marrying, the daughter, enjoyed that. I think from memory, we see them once more and we never see him again.
So that's Lon Luaga, Lon Lamanda, Luaga's son, and Leela Babua, the general's daughter,
Yes.
who have fallen in love in this story. Well, I think this story would be when we were probably introduced to both those characters, and by the end of it, they are, eloping and getting married and bringing two families together.
I like Leela. I like Lon. They're good characters. I like how they, there's that whole Romeo and Juliet theme with the rival families coming together. That's nice. I would like to see them come back.
So just to clarify, the frame up was from 1968. Leela Babua also appeared in one more Lee Falk story, and that was The Jungle Home from 1969. Daily number 105, I think the frame up we're talking about is 101. So used in pretty quick succession by Lee Falk in the late 1960s there. Has made two appearances in Tim Fantomen stories, which is The Dictator from 1981 by Don Avenel, and it has not ever been published in Australia, that particular story. And the other one she appeared in was The Redeemer Part 1 by Claes Murphy. That's a 2005 story, and has appeared in a Frew comic once back in 2005 in issue 1424. So if people want to look that up, if you really liked the character, she's listed as Leela Luaga in the 2005 Redeemer story. So clearly acknowledging the marriage with Lon, who also appears in that story apparently. So we'll have to do a bit of research and dig that one back up. So they have appeared a couple of times, but you're right. It's there's certainly, depending on how Claes Murphy left them in 2005, hopefully he didn't kill them off, and they could come back into it, particularly now that Lamanda is president again across both universes.
The artwork's great. This is Cy Barry's in his element here. Diana's gorgeous.
It's and I do love dipping into these classic ones. And so for the people who will say, "Oh, Frew shouldn't be doing repeats of old stories," I've already read this story. Not everybody has, and even those of us who have, it's fun to dip back into them again. And I don't know about you, but you probably do this a lot more often than I do. I very rarely go back and have the time to go back and dig out an old Lee Falk story or any other reprint from previous Frews and find that in the collection and go, I really want to read that particular story. Just doesn't happen as often as I'd like. So when it's presented to me, and it's not overdone, it has not been published in Australia since 1998 previously. So 5 times in total now. It was in Frew issues 380, 540 and 721, then 1998, now 2023. So it's been a while between drinks and lots of people may not have read this at all yet.
And that's why I think the giant size is a perfect avenue. Those who want to read the reprints or the reprinted stories, the newspaper stories, are generally likely the ones that want to read the giant size Sir Falcon and the Shadow and stuff like that. So whether Frew are doing this on purpose or whether they're not, I think they are, but I think they are trying to create 2 titles, one for the newer, fresher fans, which is the newer stories, the color, and then for the rusted old fans who might not have as much money, who don't want to, buy a comic every second week or something like that. You have your giant size. which gives you a little bit of, your newspaper stories, which gives you your nostalgic feel.
Take that point and run with it in a minute, but just on that nostalgia feel, I did enjoy at the end of the story as published in Giant Size, they also included the Did You Know section about which I think must have been published in the that issue 1187, which was the 1998 annual, as it happens. I reckon that would have been published on those pages as well. And I appreciate that Dudley made the decision. He could have absolutely put an ad for the trading cards or for the 75th anniversary comic book or something across that instead. I like that he included that, because I did enjoy those in the 90s. The Did You Know panels, this tells us here's a bunch of stuff that have been identified as items in the major treasure room, for instance. So just those little bits of Phantom trivia, cool to see those in as well.
I completely agree. And that, these type of things spawns the idea of, doing Chronicle Chamber, doing the Phantom Bible, the social media posts that we did and all that. We loved that as a kid. And because we love that, we're doing it from today's version of that with our social media posts and stuff like that.
So nostalgia is one thing, and certainly Giant Size is a scope for that. But also we've got Shane Foley's become quite a regular. I've already talked about him a little bit earlier in the conversation, but Shane Foley's become a bit of a regular in the Giant Size with his crossover stories, his new stories, and this one is a crossover between the Phantom and Sir Falcon. Is an interesting one. 2021, Shane Foley has put this story together and sent in to Frew. So it's taken a while to get from his drawing board to our lounge rooms. But an interesting story with Sir Falcon coming to the deep woods after writing to the Phantom to request a visit because he wants to find out, he wants to deep dive into the Phantom's chronicles to find out what happened with his own ancestors, who he says in here were nowhere near as good at record keeping as what the Phantom lineage has been. What did you enjoy about this story?
I enjoyed everything, and the beauty about what Shane is doing is by putting these characters with the Phantom, whether it was Scorpius, whether it was this or whatever, it has helped me have a greater appreciation for the Shadow, for Sir Falcon, for the Phantom Ranger and all that type of stuff. And so that's why Shane Foley and some of these other creators need to continue doing it, because of stories like this, I actually give a stuff about Sir Falcon. Being frank.
Wholeheartedly. There's not actually a Sir Falcon story other than this one. There's not an original Sir Falcon story in this particular issue of Giant Size, but I'd have been much more likely to go flip back and then read that Sir Falcon story if it had been sitting there as well. So it does give you that bit more information about the character and more likely to go and read their stories, I think.
Yeah. I just want to quickly say before we get on to the story, Shane Foley's Skull Cave reminds me of, is it the Thing from Fantastic Four?
Yes, I can see that. Yeah, it's. I always do enjoy seeing different artists take on the Skull Cave, and I think Shane has made a pretty good effort at going, well, what would a natural rock formation that kind of looked like a skull, how would that fit? And I like too the fact that in the background there you can see the Bandar village, and everybody how they live together in the deep woods.
One thing that he's done, which a lot of artists don't do, is he's actually drawn the cave near Rockface. And we're spending probably too much time talking about a quarter of a panel here, but a lot of artists do flat land and then they just do this little blob.
Yep. And
where
Wilson
it's like,
would have been one for that straight up. So yeah,
where naturally a cave would be kind of like coming out of a valley wall or something like that. So I just thought that was just intriguing how he did that.
And just to finish on that, also the scale that he had of the Skull Cave and the tiny little characters coming up to that huge rock face in the cave was pretty cool. The story itself, as I said, tells the story of Sir Falcon looking for information about his own descendants. His own ancestors. He'd have to talk to Old Moz if he wanted to find out information about his descendants. He's going to the Chronicle Chamber though if he wants to find out information about his ancestors. That's a fairly typical trope, I guess, in the history of Phantom stories where they dip into the Chronicle Chambers, and then the story that we actually are told comes from one of those books. So in terms of the story of the 7th Sir Falcon and his alleged suicide, the current Sir Falcon trying to find out the truth behind all of that, all of the politics and the scheming and that sort of thing that was going on in England back in the day. What did you make of that story, Jam?
I loved the concept of an ancestor being framed for something, and then that stain being a legacy battle to try and clear his name. It works great here. What's actually interesting is that I can't remember the story, but there was, I think it was the 9th, 10th, 11th, around that era, there was and it wasn't an actual a Phantom story exploring that. It was just like a mention where he was framed for a murder and then he escaped. It was a regret of his that he wasn't able to clear his name. And we haven't actually gotten a story on whether the son cleared his father's name or whether he went back and cleared his name or anything. But reading this reminded me of that. And it's like, it's an interesting concept we haven't really seen explored with the Phantom. And let's face it, the Phantom has the ability for that because there's 21 past generations where you can have, you know, the Phantom being framed for something. And so I like how Shane is exploring that concept.
I enjoyed the fact that it gave me insight, and maybe this is just because I haven't read enough Sir Falcon, but it gave me insight into the fact that this is also a legacy character, but one that everybody knows about. It's not that no one thinks he's immortal, and the son is the same as the father, etc. It seems to be common knowledge that the newspaper clippings in the last couple of pages highlight the fact that it's this is the son trying to take the mantle of Sir Falcon back again and that sort of thing. So it's on page 89, the clipping that I'm talking about, quite early, not at the end.
This giant size is perfect because it has a Lee Falk Cy Barry story. It has it has 3 classics and then it has 2 crossovers. Perfect ingredients, perfect read.
So speaking of the last crossover, so
yes.
the second story, or the last story in this, is only a little 4-pager. At first glance, you might think it's been drawn by Cy Barry, but it's actually Felmang doing his best Cy Barry work. I mean, his old man Moz looks like it could have come off the pages of Cy Barry, and there's a couple of shots of the Phantom on page 98 that again look like they've come straight off the drawing table of Cy Barry. So certainly Felmang. And I gather that this was written in 1992. I know that there's actually a really great piece on Chronicle Chamber, Germ, that you've researched and put together there with the help of some others to get the background of this particular story, which I think people need to read, because on the face of it, you read this 4-page story and you go, wow, what was that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Where does that fit? And then you go and read the article and you go, okay, now I've got a really much clearer understanding of how this story came into being and what its purpose was.
The story behind the story is as good as actually the story itself.
So if you haven't read it, it's a Defenders of the Earth story, really. It's focused on the Phantom universe, but it's Mandrake and Flash Gordon fighting against Ming, Cobra, and General Babu again.
And then you've got Rick Kirby, you've got Vampirella, you've got a Prince Valiant Sundays. You've actually got the auction house itself being featured in it as well. It's very clever and it's fun. That's the thing that I like about it, is that it's fun. You know, you're reading it, and I remember reading it because I was reading the Shane Foley one, and I'm reading it, and go, I really enjoyed that. And then I'm like, what's this? And then I'm reading it, and I'm going, man, that's fun. I enjoyed that. And then did a little bit of research, figured out what had happened, where the story came from. We had found the auction where the original artwork of this was actually originally auctioned. You read the story, the comics review version of the story, and then you read the free version of the story, and it's almost 2 different. Like the dialogue's different. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It does make you wonder how the 2 translations are so different. And the examples you put on the website there, Yeah, they're almost two different stories. They're so dramatically different, and it just makes you wonder how they could possibly have the translations so unique.
Think what happened, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think Rick from Comics Review didn't actually have the original Italian words, and so he actually had to make up his dialogue based on the artwork.
Oh, right.
I think that's what happened.
Well, that's a pretty cool test of an artist's storytelling ability, then, isn't it? To see how closely someone can just make up the dialogue to make sense of a story.
I hope that Glenn and Dudley pull out a few more things like this as well in the giant size.
Yep, very good. Thumbs up for giant size 26. Lots to enjoy and explore with that one. So that brings us to the end of the Australian comics that we've seen over the last 4 to 6 weeks. And now we want to go, as I said at the start, around the rest of the globe and hear what else is going on. We're going to start with Mikael from Sweden, reviewing some of the more recent Fantomen stories. Thanks very much, gents. Take it away.
Fantomen Review.
Time for another Fantomen review with me, Mikael. This time it is issue 20 of 2023. And me, as many old readers, maybe got a déjà vu by looking at this cover by Mikael Gustafsson. That's because way back in 1991, this cover was the publishing schedule. But you never saw Devil in this one, so good addition there. And the main story of this issue is a reprint, and actually Andreas explains why. It's something happened, so the story that was supposed to go had a cover that was supposed to go with the story, and it got delayed, so that's why he does it like this. But still, it's over 1 year since we got a Fantomen issue with no new Phantom content, so I think that's very well done by the editorial staff. And as I said, the story is a reprint, and it is written by Norman Walker and art by Hans Lindahl. And this was the first story that Lindahl made to be colored, not to be planned to go in black and white. And it could be read in Frew 1613. It is it's an okay story, but it's not my favorite story, I can say like that. And then we have the first part of a Thorgal story. Now the second part, the concluding part of Neo Korra. And this Thorgal story I thought was really good, and in Sweden there are a lot of people buying the issue for Thorgal only, I would guess, because Thorgal is very liked here. And let's see, in the preview of next issue we will have Döden i Himalaya, Death in the Himalayas, and Tirangis gravplats, Tirangis burial ground by Johan L. Borgnäs and Kari Leppinen. And yeah, Death in the Himalayas is a newspaper story, of course, by Tony DePaul and Mike Manley, and it will be out soon. This time it is a somewhat special episode because it's the soft cover book of the year. It is looking great with this amazing cover by Luca Erbara, and it is glossy in some parts and matte in others, which I think makes it look really cool. This year the soft cover book has a western theme, quite a lot like the annual 2018 Frew issue 1802. It is called In the Land of the Lawless, but in Swedish then. It features some story. Here is the foreword by Andreas Eriksson. The first story is The Phantom Cowboy by Falk, Cy Berry, George Olsen and Keith Williams. It was the last Barry story, and I think it's a really good story for being a newspaper story from that period. I think it has a lot of action, and yeah, I enjoyed it quite well. Then the next story is called, let's see where it starts. Spökbyn, The Massacre, also by Lee Falk and Cy Berry. Sunday story from 1972. And we see some supernatural elements, but not too much. I think it's, it is a lot, but I think it's done in a good way, so I think it's okay. Then it's Wagon Master by Ulf Granberg, Janne Lundström and Oskar Neralp, and it's follow-up story The Indian Hater by Janne Lundström and Oskar Neralp. These two stories are quite connected through the use of Jonah Blackbird. I think it's a bit of a shame that there's no explanation why Jonah went from trying to find a new home for him and his friends, the free slaved, and becoming a soldier in the US Army. It just happens. And but I mean, it's two solid stories. After that we get, let's see here, Terror in the Desert by Janne Lundström and Oskar Neralp, also from the 70s. And we also get, as a last story, Badlands by Oskar Neralp, both text and images. And I mean, this is the first Swedish publication of this story. It was first published in Kisselmaski and then in Frew, and now this basically Swedish story comes to Sweden. I think that's quite fun, and we see the 17th Phantom getting married with Mary and how they meet. My final thought as this book as a whole is that this is probably my favorite of the softcover books of all they have done, because the theme is so much stronger than the other ones, and I think that makes it more likely that I want to re-explore it, because the themes in the other ones have been quite loose. And I hope the following books, I hope they continue doing these books, and I hope they also have this strong theme as this one. Happy Phantoming.
Righto. Thank you very much. Always good to hear what is going on in the rest of the world and the way that their stories are being presented to readers. Jim, it's come to that time of the podcast, though, where we need to talk about the dailies and the Sundays. There's been a bit going on in the last month or so in both the Daily 264 and the Sunday. And I'll look up front, I haven't been able to keep as much track on these as I usually am right across the Sunday, but the Daily is sort of I've only been able to dip into that every 2 or 3 days. I feel like I'm losing track of that one a little bit. So I might need you to fill me in, because suddenly Savannah's back in the deep woods. Kit Jr.'s back in the deep woods. Have we had a time shift? Have we missed some? Have I just missed a whole bunch of panels, or what's going on with the dailies?
This whole ending of, the Phantom's been shot. The Phantom thinks, this is it. He's going to die. And it was almost anticlimactic, where I'm expecting something big to happen or to shift. And then the Phantom just goes, oh, let's just get up and we'll just walk out. And it's almost like, what happened? Is it not as bad? Or so, I'm certain I can still walk. No need to sit on the ground as I did in the prophecy. Let's walk. And so it's almost a little bit anticlimactic that the prophecy has changed enough.
Yeah, I take this as the Phantom's done enough things in response to hearing Moz's prophecy that to bend the future a little bit. And he couldn't change it. He still got shot, but it just meant he didn't get shot quite as bad, and was able to walk out. He still got hit in the same place and all the rest of it. But that's how I've interpreted it.
Yeah, and that's how I interpret it as well. Some beautiful artwork in here. Let me just say that the artwork is amazing. I did like this little bit here, just where Savannah's like, Bubbadan's having to walk, and then the Phantom's like, well, he's probably actually ahead of us where we are. We're actually taking the slow route, being on a horse. Shows the strength and the ability of the Banda. So I did like that little moment. We're talking about the journey home, which is that's the end of that story. And we've got a new story, which is still part of the overarching arc. So this is the journey home, and we see, which turns out to be Kit, sporting a full beard. And so I was confused as well, hang on, he's gone in the Himalayas clean shaven, a man, but still boyish. And now in this, he looks mannish. So I was confused as well, what's going on here? And then you've got this interaction with Old Man Moz. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into this because I know Tony DePaul always has little moments where he likes to trick us and make us think and stuff like that. But this interaction makes me think that what Old Man Moz saw and what Old Man Moz wrote for Diana and the Phantom to read makes me wonder if they're actually the same prophecy. So I wonder if Old Man Moz saw something and then he made it worse, like went to the extreme of dying, the 22nd Phantom becoming a vigilante, never returning, Diana leaving, and then the Phantom marrying Savannah and continuing the line of the Phantom through her, was like the extreme where it's so that way the Phantom had to do something, that way Diana had to do something and bring the Banda to help. And so the extreme made up story has made the future change, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so, perhaps. I hadn't thought of that, to be honest. Where you're got on screen at the moment, which is sort of 23rd of September, towards the end of September, Kit and that interaction with Old Moz. Did that wrap up? Because I feel like I must have missed something there. Old Moz just walks away, and like he's been really adamant he needs to know the exact time that Kit left the Mountain City. Nothing happened there? That didn't...
No, nothing happened there. And then Kit's wandering around and the whole village is deserted.
That's because they're all off in
yes.
Saving the Phantom from Rhodia. So no, okay. So maybe I didn't miss as much as I thought. I'll look forward to coming back again, which he won't.
We've got the 21st Phantom is okay. He's injured, but he's okay. Diana's happy. Nothing bad is going to happen to him at this stage. So that kind of makes you think like, okay, that history has changed. And then you've got this interesting dialogue between Diana and Savannah, which reminds me of some interactions between Diana and the Marshall twins. Some of her reactions with the Marshall twins is kind of like where I get this is where this is going. Savannah's happy. Obviously, she doesn't know about the possible future of her shacking up and marrying the Phantom. But of course, as any person would, if you know it's a possibility, you would look down at them and not be completely happy to see them there.
I really like, and you've already mentioned Mike Manley's artwork, but he does great action sequences and all the rest of it. But I think one of Mike Manley's real strengths, and it must come from his work on Judge Parker, I think, the way that he can have these talking heads sequences. Geez, he gets some great expression on Diana's face in particular in these sequences. Just the interaction of the people. It's just talking heads in a sense, but he comes at it from different angles. The expression he puts on people's faces makes it more engaging than it otherwise could be.
This is kind of funny. So this is on the 14th of October. Are you sure I'm welcome in your deep woods, Diana? I may never leave.
And it is clear, like through the thought bubbles that we're seeing of Diana's, then that she obviously has read. We know that she's read Moz's prophecy, but she's saying here, well, that would never follow through. That could never come true. So I was really gratified, and this was only yesterday. That's the most recent daily strip. I was really gratified to read that because I was like, well, in my head, Diana would never leave the Phantom no matter what, because that's their relationship, and it's good to see her reiterate that there.
I'm unsure whether it's going to kind of tact and we're going to see like an unwarranted, butterfly effect of the future because they've changed the future, or whether it's just going to wrap up the series. So I'm intrigued where this is kind of heading.
And I think what I said earlier about feeling like I'll lose in touch with the story, as you flick through that then, I probably actually haven't, but because I've dipped in a little bit, and each time it seems to be a different scene. It's old Moz, it's Kit coming home, it's Savannah, it's the refugees, it's the Admiral. It's all over the place, and it'll be really interesting to see how they come together. I can certainly see in a movie how you have those different scenes and flashpoints, and you're finding out what's happening here, there, and everywhere, and it all comes together. And it'll be really interesting to see how that, when the Phantom, Diana, and Savannah arrive back in the deep woods, and Kit Jr. hopefully is there waiting for them. That moment is going to be pretty cool. I don't know where Heloise is at the moment. I guess she's back in New York, back at school, I assume.
No, she's in Morristown with Cardia. Remember, they are studying there. Before this happened, Diana said to the Phantom that Kit is going to marry Cardia, which is the daughter of the Nomad, right? So now you've got Heloise and Cardia in Morristown. Kit is home from the Himalayas. So is this going to see the start of that relationship blossoming or potentially happening? I'm just intrigued. No, they haven't.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that happen.
Yeah, well, look, who knows what Tony's has planned. He might not even have a plan for that one yet. Might be on his maybe wall. I see he's kind of got this, like in the movies where you have like all these scenes and spits of string crazy. That's how I kind of see Tony's office. And he's just got all these bits of, like key panels, and then he's got bits of strings going from here and there. And then maybe he's got a maybe wall where he's got, I like this plot idea, and maybe it's Cardia and and so maybe it's still in the maybe war, and then maybe he's going to move it over and draw this little string over and stuff like that. So look,
interesting, because he probably doesn't have all of those things, but I think in his head he does. It's an interesting approach because people seem to love it or hate it. Lots of the some of the criticism, I guess, of Lee Falk is that while he created a story that's almost designed to be a continuity, he wasn't particularly good at keeping that continuity going. Used it when he wanted to, repeated stories that he'd already used, and got wives wrong, as you've said, and that sort of stuff. Whereas Tony is all over all of that stuff. I think you can probably, I think you absolutely can draw a continuous plot line from the moment he took over the Phantom to current day, 25 something years later. What that leads to, I guess, as a criticism is some people go, is this story still going? And we did. We're referring in the panels you've just shown to Savannah bombing grave lines when Diana was there. What was that, 12, 15 years ago in the comic strips. So, it's a long game. And I think sometimes people read that and go, is this still going? Well, yes, it is. It's a continuity. You've got to decide, what do you want? Do you want just these little short, sharp standalone stories that are all on their own, or do you want something that maintains that continuity?
I agree with you, but in saying that, I would like to see the next story, just something to break up this long stretch of the past 2-3 years that we've had. Give everyone a little bit of a break, a little bit of a respite, and then we can go into the next phase of what Tony DePaul has.
I can understand that because, as I said, I feel like I've lost touch a little bit, and you've missed a few, and suddenly you're losing touch with the big picture. It would be nice to have a bit of a, whether it's 9 months to a year, like you say, of stories that where there is no butterfly effect, where there is no ripples, where you're not going, oh my God, does this mean what for, the big picture? Let's just have a few little, standaloners. Which I guess is what's kind of happening with the Sunday. The Sunday certainly is a standalone. That's not necessarily true. It draws on past stories of John X and that sort of thing. The Commander Will See You Now, we're 2 months into this story now, I feel like 8 or 10 Sunday panels we've had. And in the last month, since we've been, since last time we spoke about this story, my key takeaway from this is that Kit Walker, a la the Phantom, a la the Unknown Commander, a la John X, is a wildly attractive man, and all females want to spend time with him. That's the key takeaway from the last month that I've seen.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. I will admit, I like how they've used Lee Falk to try and help explain what the Phantom, a la all the aliases, are trying to do, because it's a head scratcher when you're thinking about, what is the Phantom trying to do? You're going from, past tense to future to past, so there's that confusing because you're bouncing around, and then, and then it's kind of like, well, then you've got the guy going, what is going on? And it's like, well, that is the conversation that readers have got. And then you've got Lee Falk, which is, a figurehead in a sense for Tony, saying, I'm not sure what's going on. And then he tries to read it out and tries to explain what is going to happen. And look, if I had to explain what is going to happen, is Tony Paul is doing with John X, what he did with Savannah, and that is they became too popular. Tony is removing that element from the ongoing arc, where I think, do you really need John X and the Unknown Commander in the Jungle Patrol? I personally don't think you do. I think it would be sacrilege to remove the Unknown Commander. So that means you need to remove John X. I think that's where this story is going, is where we are going to remove John X, and it's just going to be Mr. Walker, the Unknown Commander, and the Phantom, instead of having a fourth one.
It's an interesting one, because prior to this story coming back, I would have thought that John X was just about done with. I think he could have not gone ever back to him. It would have been perfectly satisfactory. So it's an interesting, I don't know where Tony's taking this one. But going back to your point about, inserting himself in a sense into the story in the guise of Lee Falk, I find that absolutely fascinating, the way that they're breaking the fourth wall there. And this, I don't think I've ever seen this in comics before, let alone Phantom, where you, and you probably have, I don't read enough, I suppose, but not in the Phantom so much, where you've actually got the depiction of the writer writing the story and trying to nut out the plot, and then right back into the typewriter and back into the story. It's a really fascinating technique that they're using at the moment, and I think I like it. But by the same token, it does remove. It does quite explicitly say, "Oh, this is just a made up story." So that being all. Yeah, so I'm not sure. Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm not sure whether I like it or not yet. It's certainly intriguing, and I guess I do, because I'm enjoying seeing Lee Falk and seeing the thoughts there. But it's an interesting one.
Where it's also clever is that it breaks up, because there's a lot of dialogue at the moment.
Yeah,
there's a lot of explaining, a lot of detail. So what it does is it breaks up the monotony of just two people talking, which is what we make a podcast out of, but never mind, that's beside the point.
This is probably the one you've got on the screen for YouTube watchers at the moment. Is that the 8th of October is the panel that I was probably most referring to, where John X is just trying to go about his day, typing up his reports, getting lunch, and 8 different patrol women are all hitting him up and talking about, or in their mind thinking about ways that they'd like to get closer to this hunk of a man who's just turned up at the in the mess hall. Really interesting to see what is John X. What is Kit Walker playing at here by pretending to be someone feeding information about someone else that he also pretends to be, to someone who feels like he knows all of them as individuals. It's a fun little story so far. I'm enjoying it.
So I wonder, we've seen a bit of a tease with Mandrake, the Phantom saying, you're not Mandrake. And then the Sunday after, where is it? There's actually a picture of Mandrake. So I wonder if that's a tease that we might see Mandrake in this story as a bit of a crossover.
Just while you're on that page too, I commented before on Mike Manley's ability to create an interesting scene out of talking heads. Jeff Weigel's done it on this page as well, hasn't he? Just the different camera angles, and I guess most especially the one where we're behind the flower that the Phantom is reaching towards with Diana in the background, but just all of the interactions on this page.
Yeah,
different camera angles, and I think he's done a fantastic job with that as well. I think we're so lucky with the two artists we've got on the Phantom newspaper strips at the moment.
Yep, completely agree.
The last thing I was going to bring up from this section of the Sundays was the reference back to the Graveline story. I think one of the other patrol men or women, asks John X what happened at Gravelines, and he goes, "Oh, I can't tell you. That story's not over yet," which is a pretty cool little wink at the dailies where that story's not over yet. We don't know, so I think that's cool. News at the moment, the big one I think, the big one that we want to keep track of all the time because we're very excited about it is the Phantom video game coming out from Art of Play. Now, this weekend at the time of recording, Ash and Anthony and the gang are all at the New York City Comic Convention. We've seen photos that they've shared with us, and we really appreciate that, of the setup that they've got there. In conversation with Ash over the last little while, it sounds like there's a pretty regular, steady lineup of people coming to talk to them about what's going on there and building some excitement, just sort of and in the photos, I love the t-shirts that the guys are wearing, and hopefully those become available for fans to access as well, particularly if Phantom shirts are your go. We're looking forward to hearing more about it. One of the next few podcasts in the very near future, we're hoping to get Ash back on to give us an update, bit of feedback that he can share with everybody about how the convention went, where things are up to. He's talking about trailers and playable demos. We've seen hard copy blank or proofs of the boxes of the game starting to come out as well. So there's a bit going on in that space. We can't be far away from the Kickstarter launching, so looking forward to that one. What are anything you want to add to the Art of Play stuff at the moment, Jerm?
Keep an eye on our socials and website. If you do have specific questions, email them to us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com, because look, we'll be able to, if we get a good question, we'll be able to fire them off to him when we talk to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Great call. Another way that we should be getting in touch with Chronicle Chamber and getting involved in podcasts, coming up the website, Chronicle Chamber, together with David and Cy Barry, most importantly, are hosting an online studio sketch. Now, fans may remember that we've done something similar to this in the past, where artists get on and spend some time with drawing live and answering questions from fans. This one is scheduled for the 4th of November New York time, so that is a Sunday morning in Australia, and you can go to the website and check the date, the time converter, the meeting arranger that's there to see when that's happening live in your part of the world. And we would really encourage people to buy a ticket for this one, because it's going to all going to charity. Buy a ticket, get involved, and join us live for the podcast. These are always fun, Jerm.
They are. When was the last time an average fan who cannot afford a ticket to go to America to a comic convention where Cy Barry is can actually sit in their living room and watch Cy Barry draw? Not only is there Cy Barry, there's Lou Manor and Jermayn McPherson, who both have international Phantom credits. Lou's done covers for Moonstone, for Frew, for Shatki as well. Then you got Jermayn McPherson, who's got Frew credits, also comics review credits as well. So you've got, 3 highly credentialed artists who are going to be doing drawing. So while you join us on a Zoom call like this, they draw. There's going to be a screen above them to see what they're drawing of the Phantom. And then if you attend it and purchase a ticket, you then go in a draw to win one of the drawings. So, for $30 US, you get an experience of a lifetime. And then you also are in a one in whatever chance it is to get one of those drawings yourself. Know that the time might not be suitable for every fan, and we do apologize ahead of time, but obviously we had to find a time that suits Cy Barry. we want to do more. We've already started thrashing around some ideas of maybe doing another one with we would love to get maybe some Australian or maybe even some Swedish European artists as well to do another charities studio sketch session. So if you've got any suggestions for that, or if you're a creator from Australia or Europe or something like that and you would like to participate, get in touch with us, chroniclechamber@gmail.com.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the charity that the funds are going to support is the Jimmy Fund, which supports the fight against cancer at the Boston Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, a charity that's been chosen by Cy Barry, special for him, and he wants the funds to be able to go to that one. And it was also Cy who reached out to Lou Manor, certainly wanted Jeremy McPherson on board. So in terms of how the artists have come together, Cy's chosen them. It's his party. He set the time, as you've said, Jerm. We need to make sure that it's when it suits him, because at the end of the day, Cy's not getting any younger, and we need to make sure that we do everything that ticks his boxes. And being too pessimistic, we may not have many more chances to spend some time with Cy and watch him draw and ask some questions and that sort of thing. So it's a really special opportunity, and certainly encourage anyone to get involved with that one. Just go to our website, chroniclechamber.com, and you'll find the links to join up with that one. Other things that are going on in the world, in Bundaberg, very close to my part of the neck of the woods, actually, but like temptingly close. It's about 6 hours drive from where I live. Bundaberg in Queensland, Australia, are having a Phantom art exhibition that's going to run from the 18th of November through to the 4th of February next year. I'm definitely going to have to get up there at some point over my Christmas holidays. Would love to get up there for the grand opening on the 18th, but I have work commitments that I just cannot get out of on that day. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. Now, Jaime, you've already had the opportunity to have a quick chat with Shane, and we're about to hear from him, I think.
Just wanted to touch base and talk to you, obviously, about this Bundaberg Regional Art Gallery, which is titled Phantom Off the Drawing Board. Could you tell us a little bit about this exciting exposition?
I was approached a little while ago. I know the curator reasonably well. I've had an exhibition there before. And she just came to me and said about how they find a lot of people are quite amazed there's a Phantom artist living in little old Bundaberg. And a lot of people treat artwork and comic artwork like it's a slightly magical process. And so she thought it'd be a good idea, knowing the Phantom is very popular, even amongst younger people who, they all know about the Phantom, even if they don't read him anymore. Well, they know people in the family who do. And so she thought it'd be a great idea to have an entire exhibition, all original Phantom artwork there. And it snowballed. It seems to be a big thing. It's the entire bottom floor of the local gallery here.
So I believe that the entire bottom floor, it's actually 4 sections. So you're actually holding 4 sections in the art gallery, all dedicated to the Phantom. Is that correct?
There is a lot there. And there is an upstairs as well. And in the upstairs, she is contacting a lot of local artists and getting them to do a reaction to the Phantom. So there'll be a lot of oddball Phantom stuff on the other floor. So the entire gallery is going to be overtaken with the Phantom.
Now, so you've talked about original Phantom artwork. So this is going to include a lot of your own original Phantom artwork. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot of the idea she had was to showcase me because I'm the local boy. And the idea was they're going to sort of replicate a sort of office studio in the middle of it, showing Lightbox, all the material I use and that sort of thing. And I've offered them a lot of sketch pages, rough pages, which go before building up a comic page, a script, or the type of script that I work from when I write my own stories and all that sort of stuff. So most of it will be me, but they're also including, there's going to be a history of Frew on one wall, one of the short walls. And I understand she's doing her best to source Frew Phantom 1, 2, and 3. So they better have security guards on. And want some original artwork from other artists. And I know, like, I have one Wilson McCoy, it's going to be in, and we understand we've had an offer of some others. I won't mention what yet because it's not finalized, but there'll be a little bit more that's not just me. And then there'll be whole sequences from my stuff. I know that I've actually, at this stage, given them 71 pieces of artwork at the moment.
Oh, wow.
All make it onto the walls. I don't know, because it's very hard to work out just how much you need, All 11 I've done 11 covers, not counting the convention like multi covers, and they'll all be there, all framed and up there because I've hung on to all that. So they're going to have that. There's going to be a section on the female fandom. They're very interested in that.
That was one of the questions that we had. One of our followers on social media, they were actually asking about the actual concept of the female Phantom. So when you say they're having a section on the female Phantom, is that Julie with some of the stories about her story, or is that every single past female who has worn the Phantom's costume? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, at this stage, what I've done is I've replicated a few of the Wilson McCoy panels out of the Julie story, so they'll know that the first female Phantom was Julie. They're also interested in Heloise. Coincidentally, I had a cover with Heloise on it from one of the Fantomen stories, and they're sort of interested in Diana wearing the costume, and she did in Diana and the Bank Robbers, the story straight after Julie. So they're just going to mention it. There might be a bit more of a write-up about it. They'll be asking me about that, I would say, and I haven't done that yet. But it's going to be on the way out. They're going to talk about the possibility, and I understand they're going to do something like, cast your vote. Who should be the next Phantom?
Oh, nice.
Halloween. So they're going to try and get the girls involved. They're getting, super collector Paul Maloney. He's bringing up a stack of Phantom rings. There's going to be rings there, and I understand there's even going to be some of those New Guinea shields as well.
Yes, I believe that. And I believe that there will be some other merchandise that he lending. I'm assuming he's not donating them. I'm assuming it's only on lend.
So, and there will be some of the Frew merchandise as well. Like Frew's on board. They're very helpful.
That's awesome.
Glenn's coming up for it.
Glenn's. And then I believe Paul Mason, artist of Kid Fans.
Oh, I left that part out. Yeah, Paul. See, in this gallery, they also have a children's section where kids respond to what's in there. So Paul Mason's work is going to be the theme of the kids section entirely, and all that. But Paul is also going to be in the main body of it as another interpretation of the Phantom. So yeah, it's not just me. Mine will be the bulk of it on a couple of the walls, but there's plenty more besides just me.
People like Cy Barry, Paul Mason, Glenn Ford, are they all okay about playing second fiddle to you?
I've never quite put it like that, but everyone seems happy so far, and unless there's a major betrayal coming, the answer is yes.
Awesome. I also believe that there's going to be a section where you're going to be showing the Phantom cereal.
In the gallery, there is a little place called the Vault. Like they've got all these little sections and walled areas and stuff, but the Vault is going to have, is it the Tim Tyler cereal, the 1940 cereal or something? That's going to be running. I think they looked into the Billy Zane one that was a bit problematic or too hard to get or something, if I can say that. Yeah, the very old cereal will be running in the Vault. Paul Mason activities for kids based around Paul Mason's art is in the children's section, and then there's all these other little sections as well. And I've got stuff there like a script, then a scribble page, then another page. There'll be a light box there. People will be able to see what it's done with and all that sort of thing, and quite a few sequences out of giant size and the things I've done. You have to walk into the Skull Cave to get into it.
Oh, you're going to have a nice big cutout of the Skull Cave.
It's going to be painted by me, I understand. They're building a false wall with a door in it, and I have to paint the Skull Cave on it.
Oh,
that
nice.
hasn't happened yet.
Now, I believe that there's two major events as well. There's the Friday, the 17th of November, which is going to be the opening night. I'm assuming you'll be there, and I'm assuming Paul and Glenn Ford will also be there.
To the best of my knowledge, yeah. I know Glenn's coming up for it. I think Paul will be there. Or the Saturday, there's walkthrough, signings, question and answer sort of stuff, and talk things. So yeah, that's the Saturday.
All honestly, this sounds very exciting. Over 100 pieces of original art from yourself, from Wilson McCoy, and from some other well-known artists. There's going to be the whole gallery decked out. There's going to be room for the children, sections on Kid Phantom, on female Phantom as well. The 18th of November to the 4th of February. Weekdays 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and weekends 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's Saturday and Sunday. The cost is free. The location is the Bundaberg Regional Art Gallery, which is 1 Barrelin Street in Bundaberg. Barrelin.
Only out of towners called Carolyn.
Wish you all the best with this exciting expedition. Yeah, hopefully maybe we can even get Rebecca and maybe yourself on for a bit of a chat closer to the date as well.
There we go. Sure.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
All right. So what was your key takeaway from that, Jerm?
Just how large it's going to be. There's like 4-6 rooms. There's going to be local artists doing their depictions of the Phantom as well. So I think that's important. Not only is it showcasing a national or international hero, but you're getting local artists who may have never picked up a comic, who are now going to pick up a comic, and then they might go, oh, actually, I really enjoy this. And, these artists may be artists from like pottery to abstract art to, realism artwork. There may be an artist who might even be good enough for Frew to be able to draw something. So there's that, and then these artists are going to see a local artist in Shane Foley, a local identity who can say, well, if he's now an international artist who's drawing comics internationally, his comics have been in Australia, have been in Sweden and stuff like that, there's a pathway for me to do that as well. So I think that's great.
Even if you've been an ambulance driver for most of your career, it's never too late.
And I was actually talking to some WA Perth guys this week, and they were like, oh, why can't it come over to WA or something? And I ended up just saying to them, I said, well, it doesn't have to come over to WA. You can organise something. And I really just throw that challenge out to anyone else who's saying, oh, why is it only going to Bundaberg? Why isn't it coming to my hometown or something? Bradley Peach did one in Albury Country, New South Wales. And, I know there's been others. Maybe if you've got a great collection, go to a local library, go to a local gallery or something and put the suggestion to them. Say, well, what do you need from us? Get a couple of fans together. What do you need from us to be able to do an exhibition on the Phantom? The beauty about Frew is that they've got artists in all around. There's artists in Tasmania, there's artists in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, even in Perth and WA and stuff like that as well, is go to them and say, I want to do something on the Phantom. What do you need from us? Because knowing a lot of people who work for local governments who want to do stuff like this, they want people to be able to help them. So maybe see it as a challenge. Maybe, let's see if we can have more Phantom in around the local governments in expeditions and libraries and stuff like that. Have a conversation.
It's a great point, because the reason it's happening in Bundaberg is because that's Shane's hometown, and so he's heavily involved in setting that up. Well, watch this space, and as I said, I certainly hope to get up there myself and maybe do some roving reporting from Bundaberg. All right, let's move on. Something that has already appeared on the website is our YouTube review of the monogram keychains. Now, they're out in October this year. I haven't been lucky enough to get one yet. It's a range of keychains that's got a lot of Defenders of the Earth characters based around them, come in little blind bags, and I'll talk about why that's crap in a minute. They do have two of the series are Phantom characters. And Jerm, I know you've done the review. I assume you've got them there to hold up and show us?
Yep, got them here. Look, they remind me of the pop vinyls, with the big heads, little bodies and stuff like that. But look, my kids love them. I think they will be a hit amongst kids. Buy them, put them on your kids' school bags. I think they're probably a bit too bulky for an actual keyring, but they will look good on school bags and stuff like that. You can buy them individual blind bags in the States. You can buy them for about $6 US. You should be able to find them on eBay soon. We've got links on our website on the review where you can actually buy the whole case. Why do you not like the blind bags, Dan? Tell me why you don't like the blind bags. Tell it to his face. Tell it to his face why you don't like the blind bags.
I don't like the blind bags because they're blind. If I'm going to go and spend $6 US, so I've got to, hypothetically, if they were available in Australia and I was going into a comic shop and there's a box of blind bags and I can pick them up and I've got a 1 in 10 chance of getting a Phantom character, that means I've got a 9 in 10 chance of not getting a Phantom character and ending up spending money on something I didn't want. Maybe if the only way that I would collect these is to buy the whole box so I'm guaranteed a set. But it irks me, the idea of buying something and not getting what you want. And I think Steve would probably say something similar if he was here. He's lucky enough to have purchased some blind bags of the Boss Fight Studios figurines that came out, in the last 6 months or whatever it was. And he has sent us multiple videos of going, right, I'm buying one more of these blind bags. All right, here's the grand opening, here's the reveal. Oh no, I don't want this. So it irks me that you take the risk of getting a character that you don't want when why would you spend the money on it? So I'll wait till they're available on eBay and I can get exactly the character that I want because I'm a Phantom collector, not all of this other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, it's a very valid argument, but I guess the reason why you do that is because for the shops, like if these were being sold individually like this, they would be ending up with all of the characters that no one wants, and then they've got useless stock.
Well, why do I have to have the useless stock?
Because then you would go buy another one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. And
so instead of just buying two, because you go, oh, I got the light purple and the dark purple, I'm happy, I'll buy two. You might end up buying 6 or 7 until you get the two that you're after.
Yeah, probably. Really interesting because you said that kids love it, and I'm sure that they wouldn't. But kids are the market for things like blind bags. And I remember buying, footy cards and that sort of thing. You collect a set, and you're going to end up with multiples, and that's okay. You're getting a pack of 9 cards for $3 or whatever it was back in the day. But I don't know that kids are going into shops to buy these. They're all characters. Other than the Phantom, they're all characters who don't really have any currency. Even the Phantom doesn't really have currency in America. It's been a long time since there was anything there. I'm not sure who these are pitched at. I wouldn't think that many collectors like the idea of blind bags because you're collecting things that you don't necessarily want. I don't think the kids who are the sort of market who might be okay with, swapping and it's too expensive and they're characters that the kids aren't really identifying with. So I don't know. I have a real query about the selling marketing technique of this one. I really like the look of the product as you hold them up there, and would love to have a couple on the shelves behind me. But if I could, I'd buy one and I probably would use it on my work keys or something like that. But I'm not going to take the risk of ending up with a bloody Ming.
Yeah, all valid points. Look, at this stage of recording, I haven't found an Australian retailer who is supplying them. I expect there will be a couple like Pop Culture from Geelong will probably eventually stock them. I also believe that Minotaur in Melbourne will probably eventually stock them as well. So just keep your eyes out. Look, if you're a completist, buy yourself a box, and then that way you guarantee them, and then you might be able to sell your doubles to someone like Dan who doesn't want to end up with several Mings.
Must be, and this is a divergence of sort, but it must be frustrating creators of Phantom merch like that there is this blind spot at the moment with distribution in Australia, which is one of the bigger markets I would have thought for Phantom characters. But whatever happened with NECA and the Australian distribution seems to have put a bit of a stop in these things coming to our shores, and that is really frustrating. I know that my local comic book shop is frustrated by it because I'm not the only person who goes in there only asking for Phantom stuff, and suddenly the things that you used to be able to get for us have dried up. So I hope that gets sorted out sooner rather than later. All right, let's move on. We talked a bit about the Phantom art exhibition there, and Jem made a pitch for people setting up displays and that sort of thing. We do know that the Melbourne Comic and Toy Fair on October the 29th, that's a Sunday, about a fortnight from now, so still time, hopefully, if you're listening to this as it drops. Glenn Ford's going to go along and be available at the Melbourne Comic and Toy Fair. So I think Steve is keen to get along and represent us at that one. I don't think you'll make the journey over, Jerm.
Not unless you're paying for the airfares.
No. Patreon would have to start just exploding for us to be able to get around and actually report live from these things.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that's a goal for Patreon.
Yeah. Meanwhile, luckily enough, Steve will be hopefully fully recovered and be able to be our man on the ground there. And he's certainly provided a bit of information which you can find on the website as well. So get to that one if you're in Melbourne or the surrounds. Now, a bit of an obscure one and something that you'll see in our Phantom preservation project soon if you can't access it any other way. But the Phantom has actually appeared on, the Phantom as a concept, as a topic, has appeared on Australian mainstream TV again in the last month or so. Game show we've got here called Hard Quiz, where people can nominate a category that they're a specialist in and go on and get quizzed on that specialist category against other people and their specialist categories, I guess is the best way to explain it. Hard Quiz is the name of the show, as I say. My understanding from reading up on it at different times is once a topic has been used, once they've had someone get on and answer all the questions that they know about the Titanic or World War II or whatever their specialist area is, that topic's done and dusted. But the Phantom's made a return appearance, and Maria Lewis, who also did the fantastic Phantom podcast from 2021, I want to say now, has made a second appearance. Now, I actually haven't had a chance to watch the show yet, Germ. Without spoiling the questions or anything like that, what did you make of the Phantom coming again onto the ABC Hard Quiz show?
We got some good questions. Unfortunately, Maria didn't go. I think she went to the second round. She didn't go any further than that. On our article, which are in our show notes, we do have the 5 questions. It'll be intriguing whether everyone got the 5 right.
How did you? I assume you got the 5?
Yeah, there was one that technically...
Oh, is this a question where you go too much?
Yeah.
And you had to guess yourself?
Yeah. So there was a question like the oldest, ongoing publication, Frew, and then it had the question about Frew. But Frew's, there's actually a comic book series that is still being produced that was actually started before Frew. So the answer to what they were asking was right, but the way they phrased the question was not 100% correct. Like the real nuffies are going to, pick up on that. 90% of all fans would have not even picked up on that. Maybe 95, maybe 98. It's the true nerds that will probably go, well, actually, hang on.
All right. Well, if you're listening to us and you're in Australia, you haven't seen it yet, then it will be available on iView at the moment, and that's a free account you can set up for yourself. But otherwise, we'll look to make it available to Patreons on our preservation project, and that'll be updated hopefully by the end of the day. So we'll see how that goes. There is another big bit of news that's brewing. We can't say very much about it at the moment. We've speculated around this sort of topic for probably as long as we've had the podcast, to be honest. But especially over the last 6 to 12 months, we've sort of hoped that something was brewing. We felt that something was brewing. The jungle butt drums are beating, but there's some very big news that's coming out soon.
Just gentle little rumblings. But yeah, this is something we've been working on for, I would have to say, over a year now. This is something that we've been aware of. We've been, working behind the scenes and communicating. And it's not the TV show, which we've already announced, something else. So keep an eye on our socials and our website. And it's very exciting. And the video game, the TV show, this could be something else that just makes the Phantom bigger and better and hopefully more popular.
All right. Well, it's been a big conversation. I sort of thought, we've only got 2 or 3 Phantom comics and there's not much to talk about. But as always, we managed to spin it out for an hour and a half or so. So 2 hours. Look, thanks very much to everyone for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed the drive or the lawn mowing or the dishwashing or whatever it was while you were doing while we were prattling along and talking to you about all things Phantom. Jerm, as always, it's been fantastic to catch up with you and spend a bit of time talking about our favourite comic book hero.
What else would we rather do?
Absolutely. Not mow the lawn or do the dishes, I'll tell you that.
No, not at all. Thanks for listening, and for myself, happy Phantoming.
Thanks very much, everybody. Happy Phantoming.
The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He fights